right, so item 2 and 3, work session. So we're
Okay, we will start with a roll call of all members of the commission present tonight.
Vice Chair Portman,
I'm here.
Commissioner Blankenship,
Here.
Bishop,
Yep.
Freddie Guerra, not yet, Mr. Maurer,
Present.
and Mr. Walker.
Aye.
Okay. So, essentially, staff who's here tonight, so myself, Mary, from Boswell, planner, Matt Steer, Development Services Administrator, and then we have Shelby Fletcher, who's our admin tech. She'll be covering for Cami this evening. We're going to look at the cases really quick. So I'll let you want to do yours first, Matt?
Sure. So the first case is the Old Town Edition. It's on the west side of West Main. It is 0.25 acres, and what they're proposing to do is a mixed-use development. It's very similar to the one on the property to the north. The only difference is this is larger and has 2 residential units on the second floor. And Bill Peck's the architect. He's done the majority of architecture in the Old Town area, meets the parking requirements. It looks nice. It fits in. It's going to bring some people down there, some residential, as well as have the retail on the first floor. The one issue that staff had with the request was they have 2 units and they've got 2 garages, but one of them is a 1-car garage. We're going to ask that be expanded to a 2-car garage, similar to the other residential in the Old Town PD. In that same PD, they all have 2-car garages. So it would be unfair if we allowed this one to have just a 1-car garage. There is sufficient parking in the area. As I mentioned, it's pretty much a slam dunk, from staff's point of view. We did send out notices. We got 1 response in favor and 1 in opposition. The 1 in opposition related to the multifamily on the second floor. They wanted it all to be owner occupied, and they're the ones that actually own the one that's under construction. They're planning to live on the second floor and have their retail business on the first floor. So
They don't want neighbors as renters?
right, correct. They don't want the they want it owner occupied basically. But I do have.
Is that what the plan is, to have it to rent it versus selling them?
Yeah, I believe that's the plan of the ownership. They would maintain the ownership of the retail and the residential and just rent them out. But Diana Ahmed, I think that's her name. She'll be here if you have specific questions like that. The one in opposition said they had concerns about multifamily units. It was my understanding the Old Town was a single-family residential community, landlord versus owner-occupied. So that was basically their letter of opposition. I'm not sure if they're going to be here tonight or not.
Is the applicant willing to do 2-car garage?
I'm not sure. I don't think it's a deal killer if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
So, but that's our staff's recommendation.
Okay. Have they expressed any opposition to it?
Well, we had asked them for a 2-car garage. They submitted it as a 1-car garage for your consideration. So you'll have to ask them whether or not they're willing to accommodate a 2-car garage or not.
So what happens as kind of time goes on? Let's say that I bought that structure from these folks. Can I subdivide the structure and then sell the 2 residential units separately?
I believe you can have separate ownership because the way they're constructing it is it's mixed use. It's not live work. So, so you can have a different ownership of the second floor than the first floor, because there is a fire separation between the two.
And you'd have to put condo documents in place over the entire building before you sold it.
Yeah, it'd be a condo at that point, right?
Yep.
Or a townhouse.
Because you got retail on the bottom.
The one condition that we have is the second floor will only be used for residential, so never will it be used for retail uses or, converted.
Or office
Or
space.
or office space. They would have to come back through and ask the question to convert it. Similar to what George did. George Coffee and Provisions, they came back, they wanted to use some of the upstairs as office space, so they had to ask the question and get a PD amendment approved.
Yeah. So what about, in terms of the retail, is there any restriction on the types of retail they can lease to?
There is, it relates back to the H district based zoning. So we do have specific targeted uses that we'd like in the H district. But yeah, it's part of our zoning ordinance.
So you just generally, what are those restrictions?
Retail service, I think they're proposing it as retail. You can restrict the first floor for retail uses.
So I guess can you restrict the type of retail?
No.
No?
Retail is retail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just, because the way that they're dividing it up to where it's gonna have 3 shops in that space,
Could potentially have 3, yes.
well, that's how they've drawn it up,
Right,
right? So,
but you could have one occupant that takes the entire deal.
so they're not committed to
It's
3
flex.
necessarily?
I don't think so.
Is it
I
just-
think that,
Yeah, it shows it as flex.
yeah, they would have 3, but it is flex, so they could, tear down walls and.
Yeah, I don't know. It just worries me about the historical character and all like that of everything going on down there and trying to get some traffic generated for the arts center and another restaurant and all like that. But we end up with a bunch of skanky CBD stores setting up in there that just kind of scares me.
Right,
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, you could definitely talk to the owner and see what their intentions are. I think she's a resident of Coppell, and therefore, I think she wants to see it succeed.
Oh, well, sure,
Yeah,
she put a lot of money into
Yeah,
it. But she's not gonna live there.
I don't believe so, no. But
much
definitely
is she renting
ask
for?
these sort of questions.
Yeah.
But to Jim's point, if she wants to put a CBD store in there, there's nothing we can do about it.
Right.
Just like every other storefront in Coppell.
Right.
I think retail is a good land use for that particular lot. I mean, that's what it was drawn up as, master plan wise, and that's really what we want to see. And then they added the multifamily component, which actually brings some life to the area after, the storefronts close. So I think it's a win-win, really. Anyway, any other questions on that case?
How does the square footage of this one compare to that one we just did, that Let It Shine?
Okay, so this is a lot larger.
Okay.
So I can't remember the exact square footage, but this is,
It's
this,
almost 11,000, isn't it?
yeah. This one's
Yeah.
almost 11,000. I can't
I
remember
couldn't,
the
I
exact
should
square
have looked
footage
it up, but
of
I did not.
that one.
And
But,
then George, is George bigger than this? I'm just trying to put him in perspective.
I would think so.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, George has two different structures, and then the upstairs to the one structure, and then they got combined with a kind of a walkway or a breezeway. So yeah, George is on definitely a bigger lot.
Because George has kind of 2 apartments.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but George used to have 2 residences, and now it's a residence and an office?
Yes.
Right?
And then, in terms of the residential, does a HOA in Old Town, is there an HOA in Old Town? There is, isn't
There is for the Main Street project, and this would be a within that HOA.
So you can't park in the alley within that HOA, correct?
Within the Darling homes, within the,
Right, 'cause there's
those
spaces.
units, because there's not enough space in their driveways to park. So
But
that
here
was
there's
a-
spaces. Right,
Yeah.
there's
'Cause they're gonna
additional spaces
construct-
outside of the drive lane of the
They're
alley.
gonna construct spaces with
Right.
this development.
Yeah.
So if they refuse our entreaties about the one-car garage, then you could have a resident with 2 cars, like a married couple,
Yeah, so you could have one behind the garage.
and the HOA will allow that?
Yeah, you know, I mean, all these down here, they all have parking off of the alley for
Okay,
the retails.
okay.
Yeah, and that's where they have their dumpsters and their, that sort of thing. This won't require a dumpster, so,
Huh, really?
yeah.
What, none of their 3 retail tenants will have any trash?
Well,
Yeah.
you know, I
They can
I
run
don't
across
see
the
a
alley and put it in
dumpster there.
They can run across the alley as well.
But that would be a good question for them. They
Sure.
should just have the roll-offs.
Yeah, you're not required to have a dumpster. You can have like a regular trash can probably.
Mhm.
But you would think they would generate a lot of trash, if you, especially if you had free retail in there, free stores.
Yeah, definitely, that's a good question, because I don't see a dumpster, but maybe this little square is a dumpster in there.
Well, do any of the other businesses have dumpsters in Old Town?
Oh, for sure, yeah, definitely the old Doty's has a dumpster,
Tangerine.
and now it's Tangerine Salon.
Yeah,
That doesn't look like a dumpster.
Twisted Root does.
Yeah, I would think
Yeah.
George does.
Yeah, George does, for sure.
But if they needed to, is this parked exactly to code? Because it looks like in the overall development, there's excess parks. Could they use that parking space for the dumpster?
Yeah, they could convert one of the parking spaces for a dumpster.
Just put it in enclosure?
There's excess parking in the master plan, but the garage is kind of, we're recommending it. We've recommended it in all cases. These units are gonna be 2,300 square feet, and they're gonna need a 2-car garage, because,
Yeah,
you know,
it's 3 bedrooms,
Yeah.
so.
yeah, this makes sense.
And the reason that this came through is because on the original PD, it didn't have living space.
Right,
It was
yeah.
only
It was
zoned
only
as
retail.
retail, okay. So if it didn't have the living space on top, it wouldn't be coming through P and Z.
Correct, because it would meet the concept plan.
Got it.
That was a good catch, Ed.
Yeah.
I did not pick up on that. Huh, interesting.
Yeah, so if we have a conceptual PD, someone comes in with the same footprint or smaller, then they don't have to come through the process, it's all administrative.
Sure, okay.
And he's gonna be here in 5.
Okay, any other questions on this case? Okay. All right.
Okay, so then my case.
Actually, one last question,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
Are they required, maybe it's on here, they're required to have a lift or an elevator?
They are not.
Now you're gonna have
They've
stairs
got-
to the second story.
Yeah, they've got the
Just
stairs,
the
Which is
stairs?
what George has.
right.
You're only required to have elevators above 3 stories.
Yeah, sorry, one more question. I'll just get it straight in my mind. So the owner can sell off either apartment or the residential? I mean, they're kind of 3 separate things to
Not
sell?
unless they put it into a condo and separate it out, they cannot. If they're platting it on one lot, it is one lot.
Okay, so the way it is, it will be, as it stands, is the owner's gonna rent out the 2 apartments and then rent out the retail.
That's my understanding,
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah, and so however they set it up, you know, is not really a zoning issue,
No, but-
so,
Just trying to figure out how this is gonna work. Okay,
okay, yeah,
gotcha.
okay. Mary?
So item number 8 is basically the companion plat to Blackberry Farm. So it's the replat of phase 2, where there was previous, or currently is 20 lots, and they're gonna take it down to 9 lots. And they're gonna shorten the cul-de-sac of Windmill Drive. So just to kind of give you an update, the PD was approved by City Council on July 12th, City Council meeting. The conditions that they kind of altered were the overall, or the dwelling unit size for the overall development. They were requesting 2,700 square feet for, I think, phase 1. What City Council approved was 2,800 square feet for everything, phase 1 and 2. And then they were asking for the accessory dwelling units, not to exceed 8,500, but obviously larger than the main unit. Council approved where the accessory dwelling units could not be larger than the main dwelling unit. So they had to be either equal or smaller to the main dwelling unit. So those were the two changes that they looked at.
So so we didn't contemplate the 2,700, 28 for everything. It was just for the,
Phase 1.
so was that did that ask come up during the meeting?
So I guess there was some pushback from one of the council members, because originally it's 3,000 is what he,
Right.
what was approved with the original PD. And so they kind of went back and forth on, why 2,700. And so 2,700 was based, like I think we talked, I don't know if we talked about it or not. Because he had a 2,700 square foot house, I think in Red Hawk, where,
Yeah.
it's a little bit smaller than the 3,000, but in terms of amenities and qualities, it was a lot higher end. So he was focusing more on the quality versus necessarily the size. So ultimately, the council member made a motion for 2,800, and that's what was approved.
Yeah, and that was for the entire PD, not just the phase 2, so it encompassed the entire deal.
Yeah.
Well, it was interesting though, am I right that they said for Terry's cul-de-sac lot, that all the auxiliary structures together in the aggregate, the square footage of those couldn't
Right.
exceed the residence?
Correct.
And I thought, well, then he'll just build a lot bigger residence than he was planning on, probably.
That is definitely an option for him.
Yeah.
So essentially, it's, just shoring up the plat for the PD that was approved. So going from 20 lots down to 9.
So by moving the cul-de-sac in a little bit, shortening it, did that give him the kind of setback off of the different structures that he needed to make it work?
No, really why he did that was because the tree that the eagles are on is like right there. And so he pushed up the street so he could save that tree.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't changed it since it came to you guys, though. It hasn't gotten any shorter since it came to you.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was there.
Yeah, I just didn't notice it that last time.
Yeah.
There he is.
It just slides right in.
Nobody noticed.
I'm
sorry.
Hey, it
Were you at
happens.
the meeting? Did you watch it?
Okay.
Give you
watched
the
it.
script
Did
back.
he ask for the 2,700?
No.
Or is it just
I believe he did, yeah.
Yeah.
for the entire?
No, just for phase 1.
Just for phase 1.
Okay.
I remember he was saying how, well, some people are gonna buy 2 lots and it's gonna, it's not gonna matter that much and all like that, but it mattered to Mark Hill. I think he was one of the guys that was
Because he
asking
lives
some
close
of the
by.
questions.
Yes,
He's in the next
The
neighborhood.
next
over.
neighborhood over, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So, yes.
But
So I think-
I guess why would you want it smaller? Because the minimum for the other phase was what, 3,000?
2,400.
Oh, it was 2,400. Okay, so it went up. Okay.
There's gonna be senior housing at one point in time, with smaller houses.
Okay.
Kind of like rental.
Okay, I thought it was larger.
Yeah,
I thought it was
yeah.
larger than going down. Okay.
Well, he was, I think what he was
It's not
saying
gonna be
was,
senior housing now.
if someone wanted to
There's no rock,
downsize,
right, I can't afford
You know,
anything right now.
the
That's right, you
27
can't afford
would
it.
allow them to do that in phase one, where the lots are a little bit smaller than phase two.
Yeah.
It'll all work out.
Any other questions for Mary's case? Okay. I printed out the 6 questions, or Shelby actually did. And we made you copies. And at the last meeting, if you remember, I sent you with some homework. And what we want to do is consolidate these into kind of statements, not bullet points, but just kind of like a mission statement. So we're negative 30 seconds, so we're already into the regular session. So do we want to just wait and do this next month?
Is there a big agenda next month?
Yes.
Yes.
Then probably not
Okay.
next month.
Okay.
Can you send it to us in Word so we could craft some statements out of all this?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
Yeah. And so we don't want to have a quorum online, but what I can do is I can send it to I guess
We just send it individually to everybody,
Okay.
and we send it individually back.
Okay. And then I'll draft the, everyone's statements, and then I'll kind of just massage it a little bit.
Amalgamate it, yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
if that's
So
okay.
there's a statement for each item, for each?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
is that okay? Good.
That
I
works.
think so.
Okay, so email everyone.
Okay. I'm going to talk really fast, just to kind of go over what did go to city council. So the sign ordinance changes, so the pylons, billboards, school changeable letters that Matt took, that went and got approved. The Blackberry Farm PD, which I just mentioned, was approved as well. Just FYI, on your radar for Cindy, Freddie, and Jim, board appointments will be happening starting September is when they will start. Application period will be September to October. Interviews in October, appointments in November, and orientation in December. We'll talk about it again, we'll get some more stuff. I just want to kind of,
But are we up for
yes.
another one? Wow, how time flies around.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they'll send you, city secretary's office will send you information saying if you would like to, re-up, please fill out.
Are they
this
like
form and send it back.
11-month terms? That's crazy.
So Cindy, is
Yeah,
Cindy?
that's right, just 2 years.
Yeah.
Are y'all gonna re-up?
And we got alternate groups, so one group is going off
I'm sure
this year.
nothing is
one group
a
is
sure
going
thing, right? Because you're interviewing other people.
Typically, there's a pool of about 20
Right.
applications.
Yeah, this is a hot seat in here,
There
man.
was last year. With quite a few.
Jimmy, you gonna reapply?
Yes,
Good.
absolutely.
This is a good commission right here.
This is like a very popular board to apply for.
Yeah.
Oh, so we're like the popular kids?
You are the
Oh,
popular.
why?
Never
They
been
are.
popular.
Prom kings, prom queens.
Yeah.
I'm a nerd.
So I guess we're adjourning here at 6:35. A quick minute break, or you guys want? All righty, the time is 6:40, and we are rejoining in regular session. For the record, Commissioner Haas, who showed up late, is now with the commission and here before you. So item 5 on the agenda is citizens' appearance. If there's anybody who'd like to speak on any matter that's not on the posted agenda, you have 3 minutes to come state your thoughts there. Is there anybody who'd like to speak? Beforehand, we didn't have any sign-ups. Going once, going twice. Okay, we're going to move on. Mary, did we receive any comments from anyone via email on any of the cases? We'll address those during each item?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. So item 6 on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our June 16th meeting. Are there any questions by the commission, or is there any discussion, or is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I will move to approve the minutes of the June 16th meeting as written.
Okay, we have a motion by Vice Chair Portman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Blankenship. Shelby, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship,
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman,
Aye.
Chairman Haas,
Aye.
Commissioner Maurer,
Aye.
Commissioner Bishop,
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Okay, very good. Item 7 on the agenda is a public hearing. This is the Old Town Edition Lot 4R Block D. A public hearing to consider approval of PD-250R26-H, that being the Old Town Edition Lot 4R Block D. The zoning change request from Plan Development 250 Revision 8 Historic to Plan Development 25 Revision 26 Historic to approve a detailed site plan for a 10.215 square foot, 2-story mixed-use building with retail on the first floor and 2 residential units on the second floor on 0.25 acres of land located on the west side of West Main Street between Houston and Travis Streets at 767 West Main Street at the request of Diana Ahmed, being represented by Bill Peck of William Peck and Associates. We have staff report by Matt Steer. Matt?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, good evening. This is item number 7 this evening. It is the first of 2 public hearings. This property is located on West Main Street across from the Old Town Pavilion, just south of the property that's currently under construction. The conceptual plan for this area was approved in 2011, and this is one of the final lots to be developed, which will complete the west frame of the square, and the only remaining lot is owned by the city, and it's to the east of Twisted Route. The applicant's proposing to construct a 2-story building with retail on the ground level and 2 residential units above. It is a mixed-use product similar to George Coffee and Provisions up to the north, and very similar to the project directly to the north, but much larger. The first floor of the building is proposed to contain 3,347 square feet of flex retail space, and this is proposed to have a covered stone storefront facing West Main Street. To the rear of the building are 2 separate stairwells and garages, one for each of the residential units. One of the garages is proposed to be sized for a 1-car and the other for 2 cars. Staff's recommending that they both contain sufficient room for 2 vehicles, and this is listed as a condition of approval. No other project within this PD has been approved for a 1-car garage. The second floor is proposed to contain a total of 4,612 square feet for 2 residential units. One of the residences will have 2, as mentioned, 2 enclosed parking spaces that will be accessed from the alley at the rear of the property. The other one is proposed to have 1 enclosed space accessed from the alley, and as I mentioned, this is recommended to be increased in size to accommodate 2 vehicles. In addition, they will be constructing 3 driveway spaces and 6 additional spaces in the alley, and a sidewalk that will align with the other parking spaces and sidewalk on the north and south sides. On West Main Street, there already exist 9 parking spaces that were constructed with the Old Town infrastructure. A parking chart was found at the bottom left of your site plan. It showed that there were 889 parking spaces required for the master plan development, and there were 1,014 provided. Second floor is proposed to contain a total of 4,612 square feet, roughly 2,300 per unit. In each unit, there are 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, a kitchen, dining area, living room, utility room, and 2 doors that open out to the balconies that face on Main Street. On the elevations, the proposed material for this, the main proposed building material is brick, is brown brick, and then they have a gray banding that separates the retail from the residential. There's black metal canopies, and we sent out 18 notices within 200 feet. We received 1 response in favor and one in opposition. The opposition returned the letter. They said, concerns about multifamily units. It was my understanding that Old Town was a single-family residential community, landlord versus owner occupied. And so staff is recommending approval of this request, subject to the following conditions. One, a detailed engineering review to take place with the engineering permit submittal. Two, include additional garage area to accommodate 2 vehicles for each of the residential units. 3, the Director of Community Development shall have the authority to administratively approve the proposed signage for this development in accordance with the plan development regulations for PD 250R8H and the Historic District. And then for the second floor residences shall be developed in accordance with local ordinance and building codes and shall be used for residential purposes only. And that concludes my presentation. The applicant's in the audience as well.
Okay.
I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. I have a couple of questions. So within the spirit of the work-live concept, does this proposed application fall within that definition, even though it's 2 units to?
Now, this is not live-work. This is a mixed-use product where you have a retail on the first floor and then a fire separation with renters of the units. It's similar construction to the property to the north, although they are owner-occupied.
Okay, so as you understand the case, will the residential units be the owners of the building, or will it be a rental property?
They will be rented out, and it's my understanding that they will be rented out.
Okay. All right. So that's question 1. Question number 2, with regards to, I noticed from the street view there, the patios, are there any requirements on things that can be on the patio, what can't be on the patio, I don't know,
Yeah.
towels hanging from the railing, all that
This
stuff?
property is part of the Old Town Property Owners Association. So I think in their restrictive covenants, I think they have something, I'm not absolutely sure, but they fall within the same restrictive covenants as the other residences do.
Do we have any kind of understanding of what kind of retail might be below?
Right now, it's spec, so the applicant may have some tenants in mind. I would definitely ask the applicant.
And it can only be retail? Like, for example, if there was
Correct.
a conversion to a restaurant, that is a different deal that has to come through the process again?
Restaurant would have to come through the process because it's more intense.
And the venting?
Yeah, definitely. They'd have to construct a vent through the second floor somehow to air vent the fumes.
And within the historic district, this is the first mixed use, so it's the first technically multifamily unit in the district?
No, the property to the north is built as a mixed-use development, and George is also built as a mixed-use development.
But that's 1-to-1, right? One residence, the owner that works upstairs in the George, he owns the building, so he works.
He previously did live there. I don't believe he lives there anymore, and I think that one's rented, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is not a live-work, this is mixed use.
Okay. Any other questions of staff by the commission? Okay.
So in terms of the handicap parks, it looks like there's 2 that are located on the same side of the road. In terms of the calculation, I'm assuming the calculation is with the total parks in the center, based on the 1,000+ parks that are there? Or is there a proximity to each of the buildings?
The handicapped along West Main, I'm not absolutely sure. I think it's under the city's purview of how to designate the handicap spaces there.
Okay. But I mean, I guess the question is, you feel comfortable that that's adequately addressed?
We did not address the handicap spaces at this particular time. When they come through for a building permit, that's when it will be
Okay.
addressed. Now, Bill Peck, he would know a little bit more about handicap spaces than I would, and the requirements.
Okay. Yeah, so there looks like there's two on that side of the road, that the building, right in front of the building in between, yeah, okay, there you go, right in front of 723 there.
So you're suggesting that probably there would be another one in front of this retail?
Well, not necessarily. The question was just more around to just ensure that we looked at it and to make sure it was adequate.
Yeah, we do have an ADA coordinator who will look, or who is looking at the Old Town area in general and making recommendations.
Perfect.
There
So-
are a couple across the street on the south corner.
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
yeah, I saw that.
So some of that stuff, Matt, would be during the final, the development review?
Yes, I believe during the construction plan review, we will require that it does have the necessary accessible spaces.
Okay. Any other questions of staff by the commission? Okay. Is the applicant here to make a presentation? If we can get name and address for the record, please.
Commission, my name is Bill Peck, William Peck and Associates. Our address is 105 West Main, Louisville. Good to see you guys again. It's been a while. I guess to touch base quickly on the handicap issue, as Matt can attest, we've been working on this project for many years, and this actually was one of the first ones of its nature in Texas, where we had this much public parking and the individually owned buildings right next to it. So we actually hired a guy to go down to Austin to talk with them about it, and they determined the number of handicap spaces that were required around the entire development. Now, to kind of double check that, we've got the process that he was referring to as far as the city staff looking at it, and we've got the task reviewer that has to review all of our drawings before it goes to you guys anyway. So you got two more stages to go through to help with that side of it. The one thing I did want to address was the garage situation. What we are, one of the things that's been lacking in this area has been the retail. I know you guys have been trying to push for retail for quite a while. And that's one of the things that we're trying to balance in this project. And that's why we did one that has a 2-car, one that has a single car, because what we're giving up is about 250 square feet of retail space to get the second car for the second floor. And when you're looking at the site, the spaces directly in front of the doors are also technically the residential units. So, if they had guests coming over, they could park in front of the door. They'll have signs out there stating, residential parking only, don't block the door. But, so you do have a space inside and one outside for that unit that, so they could park 2 cars there. But we're just trying to maximize our retail space so that we can accommodate more options as far as what retail units may want to go into that space. And other than that, I'm open for questions if anybody has any.
Staff had recommended the 2-car spaces. Is that a deal breaker?
I wouldn't say it's a deal breaker. It's a it's a
toughie.
Yeah, it's a toughie. Yeah,
Okay.
To give up the square footage.
The square footage is 250 square feet.
Okay. I'll have a question for Matt on the parking in just a second, but what are the anticipated retail uses that you have a shell, but?
Right, it's whoever we can attract at this point. I don't know if you have any potentials right now.
Ice cream shop.
Ice cream shop and a pizza place, they're kind of a little bit.
Oh, so, and it's kind of like what Matt was saying, if we go in for some restaurants, we're gonna need ventilation, other ones we may not need ventilation. Like an ice cream shop would need a grease trap, but they wouldn't need ventilation.
Yeah, a restaurant would also need to come back through
Yeah.
the process.
Yeah,
Either way, in that one.
yeah, that's
Okay.
what I thought for ventilation and sprinkling and all that stuff, so.
Yeah, they'd have to redo the sprinklers no matter what.
Okay. Are you, aside from the parking, are you in agreement with the staff conditions as presented?
Yes.
Any questions of the applicant by the commission? Jim?
So are you thinking you're going to leave it in shell, as a shell, until you determine the nature of the tenant? Before
On the
you-
first floor, correct, yes.
Okay. Okay. And with respect to the two-car garage, I think the reason it's a concern is just because both of the living units, as I understand it upstairs, are both three-bedroom?
Correct.
And, okay. And with respect to, if you were looking at going with restaurants, is there any, how would you handle, for example, there's no dumpster provided here. Is that something that you think that you don't need, or?
Well,
it
it would depend,
tenancy?
exactly to your point, it would depend on what moves in. I know like Let It Shine's type of a business doesn't necessarily need a dumpster. If it was a restaurant, you absolutely would need a dumpster. There is the spaces to the south of the building are the most logical to be able to put a dumpster in that location. And because we kind of have a space and a half right in there. So that would be where we would propose to put one. We'd lose one parking space, but be able to get the dumpster in there.
So I guess, are you thinking that you'll build it out to shell and not put in the sprinklers and not really have it teed up for any particular type of retail until you have a tenant?
It would, well, you'd have the general sprinkler system in it. That would just, has to go in per code. But yes, it would just simply be a typical, in essence, white box build, space until they have the tenant ready for them.
And then, are you going to wait until you have the entirety of it leased? Before you, for example, I'm all in favor of the ice cream shop, but would you have to wait until you have it all leased to be able to determine exactly what you would need? For example, if you put in something that wasn't a restaurant, you wouldn't necessarily require a dumpster, but then if the other two, it looks like it's configured for 3 separate spots, is that something that's kind of, are you relying upon the presence of 3 tenants, or are you?
No, we're keeping it open so that we could use, one tenant could fill the whole space and we're done. We could go into 2, we could have 3. It's really not sized appropriate for anything more than 3. But we've designed it such that you could have 3 tenants going in there. But, if one moved in, they would be self-sufficient in their one space. If that one tenant was a ice cream shop and we needed a dumpster, that would be part of their finish-out permit.
Okay. And right now, the owners of the property are going to lease all the retail on the first floor as well as the 2 living units?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions by the commission? What is the timing of the construction of the building?
They're waiting on me and you.
So I'm going to guess.
Probably more me.
The desire is to get this thing up before school starts?
They're wanting to get it moving as fast as possible.
Okay, that's all the questions I had for you. I had some questions for Matt, though.
Thanks.
With regards to the single-family products within the historic district, are they required to park 2 spaces for those buildings in a garage?
Right, they all have 2-car garages.
And the other mixed use in the George, did they provide that for their sites?
Yes.
Okay. And then if it's with regards to the kind of retail and/or sprinkler system or whatever, if it's a unique retail, does that need to come back through the process, or as long as it's retail?
As long as it's retail, it'll just go straight building permit, and we'll review the code requirements at that time. If it's more intense use, such as a restaurant, it will need to come back through the process to ask the question.
And judging by the supply of parking, the different parking requirement for if it were to go to a restaurant, there's probably still plenty of parking and shared parking and all that within the district?
Right, we would definitely support a restaurant, and it would have sufficient parking.
Okay. Okay. Any questions of staff before I go to public hearing?
Yes, one question.
Ed?
So in terms of, I want to talk about the garage, the one park versus 2. So I'm looking at the depth of the building, and it looks like with the cutout on the bottom, that it's only going to be about 30 feet or so back to, I can't quite see the number, but right back to the garage. Is the depth roughly about 45 feet?
So from here to here, how deep is it, Bill? How deep is your garage?
We would have just over 25 feet from the front, from your storefront back to the garage.
Storefront, okay. So what was it? What was the distance?
25.
25 from here to here.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks like it's 25 back to the garage and 20 from the garage back to the exterior wall. So the reason I ask is I'm looking at the probability of sort of retail tenants coming in here. So thinking through, obviously we don't want to have a retail space that's not, that's hard to lease up. Is there, and this may be a better question for Mr. Peck, is there concern about leasing a space that only has, 45 feet of depth? Now, assuming they can get, depending on how many tenants there would be, there'd be more width. But it's a strange configuration for a retail space. I mean, so, in terms of attracting a tenant. So I'm just sort of thinking through that. I mean, I see the point on the 1 versus the 2 parks, but I also am looking at this from a retail perspective and just making sure that it's going to be, generally desirable space. And if there's anything, and there may not be anything that can be done based on the kind of the use of the building with the residential to on the top of it. So.
Right. I can tell you they've maximized the amount of building on this lot.
For sure.
So there's no room for any more building.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I could definitely see that for sure. So.
But you bring up a good point. I mean, I see 3 front doors, and if there's in the third space on the southern end is 550 square feet, is that a workable space from a retail that might go in there, or is it not desirable that anyone might want to lease it, and then you got a dead space? What are some of the sizes of the retails within the district?
I'm not sure what, Mr. Kramer, what size is your retail for Let It Shine?
300 square feet currently in the building on 529 Houston Street.
2,300 square feet for Let It Shine. That's on Houston Street.
And the one that we're building right next door is, it's 28.
Can I get you to come to the microphone?
Oh, sure.
Sorry,
Yeah,
we're picking on you
and
here.
actually, Bill Peck was his architect too,
Yeah,
so.
we did ours. Yes,
Yeah, so thank you for
you're welcome.
your comments there.
Yes.
Just so that we get your name for the
Oh,
record.
sure. My name is Gary Kramer.
Okay. And your address is
My home address or my business address?
either.
The business address is 529 Houston Street, Coppell, Texas.
And so in your building, you have 2,300 square feet.
Currently, right now, today, yes. And we're
And
building around the corner at 755 West Main Street. That building's going to be 3,500 square feet on the bottom, and you're going to have to subtract out the two-car garage, and then there's a riser room and a little bit of stairwell. So we end up with 2,800 square feet.
so do you have a tenant lined up for your building? Or
Yes.
already in there?
Yes, my wife's business is going in there, yes.
Sorry.
That's okay, that's all right.
Is it a viable business? Not dated.
Yes, it is
So,
viable.
but let
We've
me
been there
get-
8 years. It's done well. Matter of fact, we're moving from the one place we are now to this place because it's bigger. So, yes.
So kind of to the comment that Ed raises here with the image of 3 doors, which
Yes.
maybe suggests potentially 3, could be
Sure.
2. Does that south, is it a space that's workable from a retail, from your?
It could be challenging. Typically, the smallest square footage you'll see in any retail establishment is about 1,000 square feet, 1,100 square feet. That's typically the smallest that you'd go. Because typically you're gonna have to put a bathroom in it. It has to be handicapped. That's gonna eat up about 125 square feet.
Okay,
And so then
okay.
you're not left with much left after that.
Thanks for answering our questions. But now
Sure.
that you're up here, are there any other questions by the commission of Mr. Kramer? Thank you much. Were
You're
you
welcome.
signed up to speak for or against the proposed application?
I didn't sign up because I didn't know there was a sign-up sheet. The only concern I had, and my wife would have been here, but we had a late customer. I think she's still at the store. And as she would say, it was a fashion emergency. It'd been averted, so most of us probably wouldn't understand that, but she does. So my only concern was that this has got two apartment complexes above it. Typically, what I've seen in Old Town has been a single-family residential community, and I was just a little concerned about having 2 apartments, but
Okay. So
that
I'm
was
kind
my
of
only
taking it out of order. So that's your public comment. I
Yes.
have to open the public hearing, but I'll cite you there, so.
Okay.
But thank you for that.
You're
for that
welcome.
comment.
Not a
Okay.
problem.
Thanks for answering our questions too on
You're
retail
welcome.
and
No
usability.
problem.
Okay,
You good?
I'm good. So since I'm calling it out of order, I'll open the public hearing to any comments. We just received a comment from Mr. Kramer, name and address for the record's already entered into the tape. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak for or against the proposed application? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Discussion by the commission.
Well, I gotta
Glenn?
tell you, I like the idea, but I've got a problem with the parking space. I think the 2-car parking is gonna be required. And if that cuts down on the retail so you can't have 3 tenants, you gotta have 2, so be it. I think you gotta have the parking. It's not fair to Old Town overall, farmers market area, the other retailers, to put people on the street parking when they should be in a garage because they're leasing the 2nd floor. It's just my gut.
Any thoughts on the two units above?
The 2 units above don't bother me at all.
Okay. Other thoughts by the commission? Sue?
I tend to agree with Commissioner Portman on that. There are other homes out there in Old Town that are being rented already, so the rental part doesn't bother me. And I agree with 2-car garages.
Ed?
So from a 2-car garage perspective, I don't know that I'm as passionate about that. I think it's a good use to have probably, the multifamily residential on the top of the residential or on top of the retail space. But I get the point of the consistency of the development. In bringing up the retail space at the bottom wasn't necessarily to keep it a single car space. I think I can support the 2-car space. I think it's just more of the owner and developer going into it kind of with eyes wide open that there's going to be the space configurations may be a little bit more difficult. And I think that the answer to that probably is 2 tenants versus 3, although we can't mandate that. I think just, thinking through, I think if we're thinking about the development in Old Town, we want to see it vibrant and rented and good tenants. And so as long as you going into that, you feel like you can make that happen, then I think, and work around the configuration. But that's probably what it'll steer you to is a 2 versus 3. But we're not requiring that as a condition. But it's, I think, just more of a watch out.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, I guess all I would add is that, it's challenging enough to try to start a retail, leasing retail and building the building and going there that you're going through. And it's challenging enough to try to create, rental living structures at the same time. But when you combine them together in the same building, I think you do run into some distinct challenges. And in my view, I do want the 2-car garage for each of the residential structures because they're 3-bedroom, 3-bath. So, if they were a little bit more targeting maybe like, a single or, just something like that, like a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, and I think I could be pretty easily persuaded to go with the one garage. But given the fact that we've required that of everyone else down there for the most part, and given the fact that you are going to have as many as 6 bedrooms in 2 different residential areas on top, I do think we have to be consistent with respect to the amount of parking. Having said that, I also think it may drive you to 1 or 2 retail tenants just as by default. And so I certainly appreciate your entrepreneurial spirit, your desire to try to help develop Old Town, and you've got a great architect. So we'll certainly encourage you and wish you the best, but I'm going to have to side with the staff condition on the 2-car garage.
Cindy, any thoughts there?
Nope, I had the same comments as everybody else.
I'm in agreement with the rest of the commission there, and, kind of eyes wide open on this. I mean, the fact that you're requesting 2 units, that's part of the uniqueness of the challenge. That, we got to be respectful of the residential component in the historic district. And so it's part of the challenge, kind of akin to the comment by Mr. Kramer, opposed to multi. But so I think that's where you have to go into it. So I agree that we really need to stay with the 2-car concept, and that's just something you're going to have to think carefully through that as part of the retail thought there. So with that, any other comments, or is there a motion by the commission?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I will move to approve PD-250R26-H, Old Town Edition, Lot 4R, etc., subject to the staff conditions, expressly stating that the 1 unit that is shown designed with 1-car garage be a 2-car garage. And if they decide they don't want to do that, then they have to come back with another submission for some other use for the property.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Chairman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Blankenship. Shelby, would you call the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship, sorry.
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman.
Aye.
Chairman Haas,
Aye.
Commissioner Mauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Bishop,
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you very much. You have a great product that you've come forward with, so hopefully you can work through the challenges there. And thank you to Mr. Kramer for your comments, valid thoughts there. All righty, moving on to item 8 on the agenda, is public hearing. Consider approval of a replat of Blackberry Farm Phase 2, reducing the number of residential lots from 20 to 9, and shortening the cul-de-sac on Windmill Drive on 9.209 acres of land located on the northeast quadrant of Sandy Lake Road and MacArthur Boulevard at the request of Terry Holmes of HBBL Inc., being represented by Westwood Professional Services, with the staff report by Ms. Mary Perone Boswell. Mary?
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. This is a public hearing. This is a residential replat. Just to give you a little bit of background, this is a companion item to the Blackberry Farm PD that you guys saw last month. It did go to City Council on July 12th, the plan development did, and was approved by City Council with a couple of changes. So this is a replat of Phase 2. Originally, this was 20 lots. They are looking to change it to 9 lots. So with the majority of lots becoming larger, especially Lot 5R, which originally consisted of 6 lots, and it will be now 1 lot. It is shortening the length of the Windmill Drive cul-de-sac, and that shortening of that cul-de-sac was done to save a tree that does have an eagle's nest in it. So as I said, the PD was approved by City Council. So staff is recommending approval of the replat with the following conditions. 1, that there may be additional comments generated upon detailed engineering plan review. 2, that the filing information for any off-site easements must be filed and noted on the plat prior to filing of the plat, and any HOA documents to be updated and filed prior to filing this plat. So again, that is the end of my presentation. This is a public hearing, and the applicant is here as well if you have any questions.
Okay, very good. Any questions of staff by the commission? Sue?
Mary, on the HOA documents must be updated and filed prior to filing this plat. Don't you have to reference the plat filing information on the updated HOA documents?
It is a bit of a file kind of at the same time. We want to make sure that it happens kind of contiguously so that all the information is there.
So not necessarily filed before, but
Yes, ma'am. Thank
contiguous.
you for
Okay.
that clarification.
So it could be filing of the final plat? Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
at time of final plat.
any other questions of staff by the commission? Would the applicant like to make any comments? You came all the way down, you know. Might as well have you come up.
Hi, Terry Holmes, office at 225 East Highway 121 in Coppell. So it's kind of like last month, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant? Okay, made you do some work there. All righty. This is a public hearing. Is there anybody who'd like to speak for or against the proposed application? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Any discussion by the commission, or is there a motion?
I mean, just so we don't get in some kind of Mobius loop of updating and filing on the plat, could we restate it to say it must be updated and filed concurrently or at or near the time of filing the plat, so that I don't want you trapped in some kind of endless regulatory nightmare. Okay.
We can just say that the HOA documents will be updated, if that works.
Okay. So Jim, would you like to make the motion there?
I will. I'll go ahead and move approval for the Blackberry Farm Phase 2 replat, subject to the staff conditions, including a slight revision of Condition 3, such that the HOA documents must be updated and filed at or near the time of filing the plat.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Walker. Is there a second? Second, Commissioner Blankenship.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did you have a comment?
Yeah, no, second.
Okay, all right. Shelby, would you read the roll, please?
Please respond by saying aye or nay as I call your name. Commissioner Blankenship.
Aye.
Vice Chair Portman.
Aye.
Commissioner Haas.
Aye.
Chairman Haas, sorry. Commissioner Mauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Bishop.
Aye.
Commissioner Walker.
Aye.
All approved, none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming down. All righty. Item 9 on the agenda is update on council actions. We did a review of those in pre-session. Mary, are there any comments by staff before we go to adjournment?
No, sir.
Okay, only that there might be some, the P&Z application.
Right, so all the boards and, are you talking about the boards and commissions? Okay. So the boards and commissions will be opening up for reappointments. So not only Planning and Zoning Commission, but all the boards in the city. And that will start in September. And for those of you who are up for renewal, the city secretary's office will be emailing you something to reapply. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you much. Item 10 is adjournment. There being no other business before the Planning and Zoning Commission, I'll adjourn the meeting, and the time is 7:22.